I'd like to call to order the Hatfield Township Board of Commissioners Workshop Meeting for March 14, 2018. Roll call.
President Zipfel.
Here.
Vice President Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Andrus.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Tonight, there are a couple of residents who've been with us living here since the 70s on Orvilla Road. And I would like if they would, and we have an action item tonight that is related to them, and I would like them, if they would, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. That is Al and Kathy Perch. And as a small accommodation to the Perches, we're going to take two small action items that should only take a couple of minutes and move it up ahead of the presentation that I think the majority of the people are here for. They are in a position where they've waited for this evening quite a while, and we'd like them to it's only a quick matter, and we'll move it up ahead of every other items, matters, I should say, excuse me. All right, is there a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Vice President Hughes. All in favor of approving tonight's agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we can move forward with the agenda that's on the screen and in front of you. First, citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items? For those of you who are here with regard to the rezone, sit tight. We will give you an opportunity to speak on that matter when it comes up. So we're going to ask anyone else who has an agenda item that they would like to discuss. Okay. All right, we're going to move into very quickly the consent items, and then we're going to have a couple of action items. So is there a motion to enter into the record the consent items that are listed in the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Thomas, second by Vice President Hughes. Those consent items include the engineer's report for the month of February, police report for the month of February, the HTMA meeting minutes of January 9, the North Penn Water Authority meeting minutes of January 23, the Calmer Fire monthly report for January, the Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 20, 2018, the Park and Recreation Board meeting minutes of February 5, 2018, and the Pool Advisory Board meeting minutes of January 16, 2018. With that, I'll call a question. All in favor of moving those into the record, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, those are moved into the record. Okay, I mentioned earlier the Perches, Al and Kathy Perch, they're here tonight. We have two action items for agreements of sale. I'll call the resolutions, but before that, for those of you who do not know, we have been exploring a redesign of the Orvilla and Cowpath intersection for many years. And in order to do that, there are three homes that are part of, that would be purchased by the township in order to bring this realignment into place. And what we're going to do tonight, the Perches home is one of those action items where we would agree to the agreement of sale for their home, and that would be one of the two resolutions this evening. So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of Resolution 18-11, which is for an agreement of sale for 1916 Orvilla Road condemnation.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Rogers. Aaron, is there anything that you would, you have slides, so maybe you want to add to this?
That's pretty much it. We do have a question from the property owner. Mr. Perch, do you want to go to the microphone just so or I know you have a loud voice. You could, all right. Thank you. Correct. Yes, yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So what we need to do, because it is a public entity that is purchasing a piece of real estate, we need to do it publicly. We can't do it privately like you would in a private sale. So that's what tonight is about. And yes, this is our agreement for the resolution that would allow for the agreement to go through at the price that was already negotiated, that you've already discussed. And then, of course, the paperwork that goes along with that. Okay? All right, any other questions or comments with regard to Resolution 18-11? Hearing none, I'll call a question. All in favor of that resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. So now what that means is the agreement of sale that we're going to enter into with you is going to be approved, and then we can all move forward as already discussed, okay? And we really cannot thank you enough for your courtesy, your consideration, your patience throughout this entire process. We really appreciate it. All right.
Mr. President, just one piece of clarification for Mr. and Mrs. Perch. The property will settle next week on the 21st as scheduled at 3 o'clock in the Township building. We can see you then to sign all of the necessary paperwork. This is the formal approval, like President Ziffel said, at the appraised value that we had already discussed a few weeks ago. And really, it's relief for two really cooperative property owners that have been dealing this for 13 years, and the board made a really aggressive and bold and good decision to provide relief to tonight two, and next month probably the third property owner that is associated with this transportation improvement. But we appreciate your patience.
Thank you. Of course, if you have any questions between now and then, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call the office, and we'll field that, okay? And thank you for coming out tonight. All right, related to that is another address, which is 2020 Orville Road. I'm going to ask for a motion for approval on Resolution 18-12 with regard to the agreement of sale for 2020 Orville Road condemnation.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Rogers, second by Vice President Hughes. Aaron, any other additional comments or questions?
The only comment, just for clarity, so these are the bookend properties seen on the slide. The Township, roughly 2 years ago, acquired the former gas station on Cowpath, the additional right-of-way that would be necessary to create this realigned road. And now with these two and the third that will be acquired most likely next month, Township will then own all of the necessary right-of-way to realign this intersection, which has been a very dangerous intersection. All of us in the room probably are aware of it and may become very close to being in an accident there, hopefully. Close, but there's been 50 documented real accidents there in the last 5 years, and we've done everything, the commissioners have done everything they could in the last 15 years to pursue funding for this realignment, and we're closer now than ever before. So thanks to the commissioners, we're one step away from creating a safer intersection.
All right. With that, unless there's any other questions or comments, I'll call the question. All in favor of Resolution 18-12, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that is approved. So that is two of the three properties that we have approval on now. Okay, we're going to jump back to the original agenda, or the listing of the original agenda, which brings us to our special item. And the first matter there is 3515 Cowpath Road zoning change request, presentation of revised plan. Mr. Bartle, I think that you have a presentation for us this evening.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Frank Bartle, and I represent Envision Land Use, the equitable owner of 3515 Cowpath Road in Hatfield Township, also known as the Walter Track. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for allowing us the opportunity of being here this evening. You've been generous with your time, both to us and to the residents that have been here. We had two prior public hearings with respect to this matter, and I know the board has spent a lot of time otherwise reviewing the matter. As you know, we've asked that the property located at 3515 Cowpath Road be rezoned from its current zoning, that being a split zone between LI Limited Industrial District and the RA1 Residential District, to a residential use in its entirety. We've asked for the rezone because the property is inappropriately zoned industrially, and we have presented evidence supporting this during the previous hearings before the board. As you heard in the hearings, the property location and the size make it a terrible candidate for industrial development. It is simply too small in size and too far from major roads or highways to be a legitimate option for an industrial use. Further industrial zoning of this property is inappropriate because industrial use at this location would have a negative effect on the surrounding residential uses. The traffic generated by an industrial facility, including large trucks on the roads at all hours of the day and night, and lights, noise, and odors would have a significant impact on the surrounding homes. For these reasons, the property is more appropriately zoned residential. I'd like to introduce some of the people that are here with me tonight. First of all, the principal of Envision Land Use, Bob Rosenthal, is here. Also here with us is our land planner, John Kennedy, with us as well. And also here is Bob's son, Reese Rosenthal, who's with us as well. We, as you can see, are very much interested in the project and what we've proposed for your consideration, and these gentlemen have been here with me throughout the proceedings. A number of months ago, we checked in with the township as to the status of our request. At that time, we were asked to review and respond to certain topics presented by members of the board, township staff, and township residents. Those points, if I may, Mr. Zipfel, I believe were articulated by you at the conclusion of the meeting after we had a discussion, and they had all been listed. Some of them were listed twice, if you will, and some of them impacted others. I've broken them down to 11 classifications, and they are as follows. Traffic impact of the proposed development. 2, the Durstein Road and Cowpath Road intersection. 3, Cowpath Road widening. 4, impact on the school district. 5, open space preservation. 6, number of homes. 7, impacts on Baptist Temple, and we've reached an agreement with them in this regard. 8, the benefit of a residential development rather than industrial development. 9, the property rights of the Walter family and Envision, the equitable owner. 10, the Planning Commission reviews. And 11, our proposed declaration of covenants. I believe we've covered those issues. To the extent that we haven't, we'll certainly be ready to answer any questions that you may have in any other regard. To accomplish our task, we've reviewed the information we previously submitted at the hearings and have spoken with a number of the neighbors of the property and the leadership of the Baptist Temple on Township Line Road. These conversations have demonstrated a need for some changes. We're here today to present information on the topics mentioned and our updated plans for the Walter property. I will initially state that our proposal as amended proposes the creation of a new religious and cluster option in the RA2 residential zoning district. Previously, we were simply requesting that the property be rezoned RA1 residential in its entirety to resolve the split zoning. Our proposed religious and cluster option, we believe, provides a more nuanced approach and resolves some of the concerns that the township may have, because you have a lot more RA1 property than you do RA2, and to put the provision in that district as a conditional use would mean that you'd have less things to worry about with respect to other properties as your solicitor reviewed the ordinance. And that's essentially the reason for that. Based upon the proposed cluster option, we have an updated sketch plan. The updated plan is included in your packet as Exhibit 1. A draft of the proposed RA2 religious and cluster ordinance amendment is included as Exhibit 2. I'm now going to ask John Kennedy, our land planner, who was recognized by this board as an expert in land planning and zoning in our hearings, to review the changes that have been made to our plan since our last meeting with the board on the proposed amendment. John?
Good evening. The plan which you see up here behind me right now is the original plan that we presented at the original hearing. This was the plan that was prepared under the RA1 zoning. And Aaron, if we go to the next plan. What we see here is the plan for the proposed zoning change to RA2. We have basically the same number of lots. We also have a similar amount of open space. We have about 29.5% open space. The biggest difference in this plan is, if you notice on the left-hand side, we have an area about a little bit over 2.5 acres, which would be deeded to the Baptist Temple next door. So that will help deal with the issue of adequate space for BAPS to be able to continue and grow, and then also adequate space for landscaping and buffering and such. You get a little bit of an idea of some of the potential addition space which they could actually add to the existing temple. They also would have more than adequate space for parking. This would also give them the opportunity to have an entrance off of one of the internal roads as opposed to only coming in off of Township Line Road. Basically, it's a very similar type plan. Because we're in RA2, RA2 has a different minimum lot size than RA1. We have added the cluster at a slightly smaller lot size. These are 9,000 square foot lots. Structurally, the ordinance is pretty much exactly the same as the cluster in RA2. The only real difference is it is a conditional use. The only real difference is a modification of some of the lot sizes. So you have kind of a corresponding step down from the RA1 to the RA1 cluster, and we've done the same thing with the RA2 and the RA2 cluster. And as Frank pointed out, we are also adding the religious use, which would actually be done by a special exception. So in the future, as the Baptist Temple would like to expand, they can do so and be completely within zoning, as opposed to their existing situation with industrial zoning and variances and such. If we go to the next slide, which is this is basically a blow-up of the plan that we just looked at. It's just zeroing in on the area around Cowpath Road. One of the things that we are committed to is providing an extensive buffer against the existing homes that front on Cowpath Road at this time. So we have a 50-foot minimum building setback that we have proposed, and we actually have a buffer that exceeds the 50 foot, as you can see here. One of the things that is very important is preserving as many of the existing trees as possible. We also are actually preserving and saving some of the trees on the Walter property itself, so that this would minimize the impact of the view from some of these residents along Cowpath Road. And I don't have them on this plan, but to give you an idea, the dimensions, if you look at where the existing homes are, and then when we look at when we factor in the yards and where the proposed homes would be, you're generally talking a typical distance of between 180 and just over 200 feet between building to building, where the existing homes would be and the proposed homes. And then, of course, in between that, in that space, there would be a lot of plant material. So I think that we've come up with a way to adequately mitigate any kind of impact from the proposed development. And one of the other factors of the proposed development that Frank had mentioned was traffic improvements. So if we can just go to the next slide. What this does, this gives you an idea of one of the major traffic improvements. This is the intersection at Durstein Road and Cowpath Road, which would have a light installed at it and also would have some minor widening. It's widening that you can see in yellow. Some of it's a little bit tough to see on the western side, but this is actually a plan that was done by McMahon Engineering, and these improvements would be made. There would also be, I believe, a left turn lane installed, and the traffic engineers can get into greater detail of that in the future, but this would all be covered by envisioned land use. One other further traffic improvement that would be included would be additional right-of-way that would be shown, that would be given on their land. Maybe if I can go back 2 slides, Aaron, to the overall proposed plan. If you see basically right above the word Cowpath, there would be some provision for additional right-of-way. That's really to be held for the future. As you all are aware, Township Line Road will become the connector at one point in time, and so there will be some kind of improvements needed around that intersection where Cowpath Road and the connector road come together. Part of the land that you see right where the intersection is, that's actually owned by Pico. So that would, the right-of-way that we would give would be able to add it to whatever Pico would give up, and that would accommodate that intersection in the future when that finally would be implemented. And basically, in a nutshell, those are all the changes to the plan at this time.
So what size lots are the houses on Cowpath that abut that property?
Which
The existing properties?
Oh, those are RA1 lots, and I believe those are 20,000 square feet, I think.
And you're asking for 9,000 square feet lots for
That is correct.
single-family homes?
That is correct.
Are there any other developments in the township with that kind of lot for single-family homes?
I honestly do not know. It's a
You
very...
want us to rezone it to put houses and then even give you smaller lots to put more houses?
They may be smaller in terms of area. They're actually fairly wide for 9,000 square foot lots. They're 75 feet wide.
But there's still 9,000 square feet, so you can shove more houses in there.
No, the densities of the plan are the same. The two plans are the same. The difference is the configuration of the open space and the land which is going to the Baptist Temple. That's really the difference.
No, it's the smaller lots. So you gave us the sleeves out of your vest so we can have a little bit more open space, but you get smaller lots and keep the same amount of houses.
Yeah, let me address that, if I may, Mr. Hughes. You are correct that the lots are smaller than they had previously been.
Or have been anywhere in the township on the development.
But the number of homes in the last plan was 64, and this plan is 65. So it's virtually the same number of homes. The difference, as Mr. Kennedy had pointed out, is the fact that there is a difference in the open space and where the open space is located. This is a cluster plan. That's the nature of cluster plans. Cluster plans, the individual lots are smaller, but there is more open space that is reserved in the open space areas, and there is other space that's provided elsewhere. In this case, it's the contribution of the 2.68 acres to the Baptist Temple. If you take all that land, the property hasn't grown or shrunk since the last time we were here. If you take all of that land and you take a look at how many units there are, it's virtually identical
You're
to where
still
we
asking
were
us to
before.
rezone the property and then give you the smallest single-family lots in the township in a development.
Well, I can't tell you that they're...
All there is to it. That's the
can't-
answer.
I can't tell you whether they're the smallest or they're not the smallest. I can tell you that in terms of the density, if you take a look at the entirety of the entire lot, you will find that this is not the most dense housing by a long stretch in
But it's going to be
Hatfield
the
Township.
smallest lots that we would approve with a development in this township.
Again, if you take a look at the nature of a cluster
Are
development...
you telling me my statement's wrong?
I'm telling you your statement is misleading.
No, my statement is correct, right?
No, I'm telling you your
You
statement...
don't have another development in Hatfield Township with 9,000 square foot single-family homes.
Larry, I'm not telling your statement's wrong. I'm telling you it's misleading.
That's the statement I made. That's it.
If you will take into consideration the open space that's afforded in the plan, which is the nature of a cluster development, you'll find that your density calculation is significantly less than what one would believe based upon talking about the lot area only.
But the only way you get as many houses you want is if we give you 9,000 square foot lots
And again,
after we rezone it.
and again,
I'm not going to do it, so don't try and convince me. I'm done.
the last time we were here, we were talking about 64 units on the same piece. The difference is in the calculation with respect to the open space and the lot size. And yes, those things have changed. The 2.68 acres doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes out of the ground of the property. And so too does all of the open space. If you take a look at this, outside of the 9,000 square foot lots, there's a lot of open space on this project. By the way, if you look at the ordinances, it makes it very clear as between the two. If you look at the RA2 zoning district, you'll see that generally speaking, I believe the open space is about 12%. In ours, it has to be greater than 25%, and it is in fact almost 30%. It's like 29.4%. So that's where the difference is. And that's why you can say something that is technically true, that the lots are 9,000 square feet, but misleading in the fact that it doesn't take into consideration what's happening with the rest of the lot.
Not misleading. The lots are 9,000 square feet. We
Well-
don't have a development in Hatfield Township with 9,000 square feet lots for single-family homes.
Again, we'll have to
So
agree.
you want us to rezone it and then give you 9,000 square foot lots?
Yeah, with all due
That-
respect.
is that true?
With all due respect, we'll have to agree to disagree because it is a misleading statement. It is technically true, it's misleading because you haven't added in the rest of the lot. You've acted
No,
as
it's
though.
technically true. It's true.
It is technically true, but misleading because you're not adding in what we're providing in open space elsewhere.
I don't care to add it in. I'm
for
making
your-
a statement.
for your purpose and-
You're asking us to rezone a piece of property and then have 9,000 square foot lots for single-family homes, which does not exist in Hatfield Township.
For your purpose in being against the project, yes, that is what you want to say. But for our purpose in trying to be fair about what we've done with respect to the plan, from the last time we were here to this time that we're here, the total lot area is still the same, and from that you take the 2.68 acres, and from that you take the additional open space, and then you get down to the lot size. But the number of units is virtually the same.
Let me ask a different question about the project.
Sure.
I know a number of the members of the Baptist Church, I see them here. I'm assuming that the portion of what is been discussed tonight, and I guess if I'm reading this right, is it 2.68 acres that would be deeded to Baptist?
Yes.
I'm assuming there's been discussions with members of the temple and that they are in an agreement with what is being presented?
Yes, and actually, I was going to finish my presentation. You'll find at the end of the presentation, to answer your question, we have an agreement with them. It has been reduced to writing. It is included in your packet, and you will see that one of the things is that there is going to be a conveyance of that 2.68 acres to the Baptist Temple.
Read my mind, because the next question was, how is it memorialized? And so it's in our packet already?
It is, sir, yes.
Is that a part of, would that be a part of the deed restriction?
It is not a part of the deed restriction. It is currently a separate
document.
agreement with the temple. However, if it would be the will of the board to have it incorporated in the deed restriction, we have no problem with that. We'll contract with anybody as to what we've promised, because we're going to build it that way.
No, we definitely appreciate, the effort that you've put into this, because when you were here the last time, for those of you who weren't, the applicant, we identified a number of shortcomings, or what we saw as shortcomings, and that's what Mr. Bartle listed when he first came through. He said there was 11 items, and those items we had previously identified for the applicant. And for those of you who are wondering what tonight is about, there's no decision tonight that's going to be made on a rezone or not a rezone. My understanding, I haven't discussed this with the applicant, but just talking to the staff, is that this is a response to what we identified as the shortcomings, and then an application, a formal application of this plan would be put into place, and then we'd come back, we'd have our standard regular hearing, and then we could get into greater details, of course, and as we would, and of course, everyone is invited back to be a part of that conversation. So for those of you who are thinking that a decision's being made tonight, it's not. This is just kind of an ongoing dialogue that we've had with the applicant. Well, you answered my second question, which was that understanding or agreement reduced to writing? And then there was a reference made to a left turn lane. And
Yes.
You'll excuse me because I didn't follow that portion of the presentation. Where are we talking about a left turn lane? On Durstein, getting onto Cowpath?
I believe it's on the plan that John showed, isn't it, John?
Oh, I'm sorry, there it is. I missed that. It's actually on Cowpath to get onto Durstein. It's the other way around. Having traveled Durstein and Cowpath almost every day, I know that that's, whether you're making a left onto Durstein or off at Durstein, it's not a good intersection.
Right, it is part of that plan, yes. Let me move to the traffic impact and the Cowpath-Durstein intersection. Anytime that a developer proposes any kind of development, it will have an impact on local traffic. Certainly the difference between our plan and a vacant field will increase traffic to some extent. I think it was made clear during the previous hearings that the traffic impact by our proposed residential development would be significantly less than a by-right industrial development. In fact, if you look at the documents that we've presented in that regard, the trip generation comparison letter that was previously provided reveals that our proposed development is expected to generate 1,200 less average weekday trips, 231 less weekday AM peak hour trips, and 198 less weekday PM peak hour trips when compared to the by-right development of the property. We've again included the trip generation comparison letter in our packet as Exhibit 3, and we've also included a new trip generation letter that we had prepared as Exhibit 4. And you'll see with respect to the new trip generation letter, it actually talks about the trip generation for the residential development. And you'll see that the traffic engineer has concluded that whether you're talking about AM peak hour or PM peak hour, the total of the two exits or entrances, means of egress and ingress, would be about 60 trips, which is about 1 per minute. It has been determined in the opinion of the traffic engineer that that is insignificant with respect to the traffic on the roadways in question. It is certainly far less than what the by right use would have, being some 1,200 trips per day less than what that would generate.
So, Frank, I'm sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you, but so generally speaking, just so we comparing apples to apples, the trip count really is the same from the original presentation. It's really the same.
Yes,
rough,
it's
right? Okay.
virtually identical, yes.
But in comparison to the by right plan, that's the differential.
The differential of 1,200 less trips per day is from the by right to the new plan.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan that we presented the last time and this plan are virtually identical.
Something very minor, the numbers that were presented in the most recent letter
Yes,
still only shows 64 homes, while the new plan shows 65.
you're correct. We did not get that information to them in time to get that done. You're right. You would take it and multiply it by give it an additional 164th or 165th. Yeah, which again would be insignificant in the calculation. Also, at the request of the Township traffic engineers, McMahon Associates, and to ensure the proper management of traffic with the new development, we propose to install the traffic light at the intersection of Cowpath Road and Durstein Road, and to install the to install a turn lane on Cowpath Road for our property at that intersection. We'll also offer for dedication sufficient land on our property to allow for the widening of Cowpath Road, as was indicated by Mr. Kennedy. We next move to the issue of children in the North Penn School District. And the question became whether this residential development would burden the North Penn School District. It will not. It is a fact that residential development provides 100% of the school-age eligible kids. If you take a look at your development, obviously all of your kids live in communities that are residential. Whether they're zoned that way or not, they're used that way. And 100% of the kids come from that. None of the kids come from the industrial and commercial developments, though the industrial and commercial developments do provide tax dollars. So what you see is that while 100% of the kids come from the residential, the tax dollars are paid for, and the school budget has to have your expenses and your revenues balanced at the end of every year, just like all budgets. You'll see at the end of the year that the taxes coming from commercial and industrial are contributed toward those revenues, whereas the expense side just comes from the residential because that's where the children live. So the fact of the matter is, on average in a community, residential is always a losing proposition with respect to school districts, because across the board, your residential sends all the kids and maybe pays 50% of the taxes, if that. I don't know what that exact number is, but pays some percentage of the taxes, not the 100%, because industrial and commercial is included in that as well. So the real issue here is, if you look at Hatfield Township as a whole, does Hatfield Township send a disproportionately high or low number of children to the North Penn School District? And as we proved here in the hearings at the time, Hatfield Township sends a disproportionately low number of children to the North Penn School District. And the reason for that is because you have a lot of your property that's zoned industrially or commercially. I think at the time we presented testimony and showed you in the charts that Hatfield Township had significantly more industrial zoning than any of its neighbors. And therefore, that particular land is not used for building of residences and sending kids to school. So if you take it on average across Hatfield Township, you send less kids to school per your population and your land mass and your taxes paid than do the other communities. And I believe we provided that to you in a chart at that time. So I did want to reiterate that we have answered that question and laid that out for you. In summary, the development will not burden the school district. It will simply produce the typical number of school-age children that would be expected from any residential development of its character. Hatfield Township will continue to have proportionately less public school children than the other North Penn communities. As to open space, we've designed the proposed development and proposed cluster option in a way that preserves open space for the benefit of the township as a whole and for the local neighbors. Under the cluster option, 25% of the total developable area of the parcel of land should be preserved as open space, not 12 as would be the norm. And you'll see in the updated plans that we're now able to preserve 9.4 acres of open space, which is, and I said it was close to 30, it's 29.4%, significantly greater than the requirement. The proposed development in the amendment to the RA2 residential district allows for the use of the property with proper zoning while still maintaining significant open space. As to the number of homes, our proposed development has less density per acre than the surrounding residential neighborhoods. As mentioned, we have focused on preserving significant open space while proposing larger and more expensive homes than in the other areas. So the development will therefore complement the surrounding existing residential neighborhoods well. What you'll see is that we have a product on those homes, and I believe Mr. Rosenthal had indicated that that product would probably sell on average in the 450 to 500,000 and up range, which is a very good number for that particular area of the township, so that you'll see that those homes are a little bit bigger, a little bit more pricey than maybe what surrounds them at this point in time. That'll be good for the overall development of the community. I want to talk a little bit about the Baptist Temple and the neighbors. We have a significant number of people here that have an interest in that. We've made every effort to work with the neighbors of the Walter property and to answer any questions and concerns that they may have with regard to the proposed development and the impact on their properties. First, with regards to the Baptist Temple on Township Line Road, we've come to an agreement with the Baptist leadership to provide more than sufficient buffering between the proposed development and the temple by subdividing and transferring a roughly 2.68 acre piece of the Walter family parcel to the Baptists. On that parcel, they plan to expand their worship space and kitchen and will provide to us the easements necessary to allow stormwater management facilities for the benefit of both developments, both of the properties. There'll be common areas with respect to the stormwater management. Therefore, and by the way, that'll be taken care of by the homeowners association at that time, so it will not be a burden on BAPS. Therefore, aside from the buffering, the transferred land will also provide the temple with additional ground to advance their mission in the community. This development is truly a win-win situation for the temple and for the proposed neighborhood. We also sent a letter to 9 neighbors who own the parcels that sit between the Walters Farm and Cowpath Road to invite them to a breakfast meeting to hear our updated plans and answer any questions. Copy of the letters that we hand-delivered are included in your packet as Exhibit A5. So we wanted to make sure that everybody did get the letter and did get the invitation, and they all did. A number of the neighbors chose to attend the breakfast. At the meeting, we were able to have frank and honest conversation about our intentions and their questions. I do have the names of the people who attended, could discuss that, but it's really not important. There were a number of them there from that particular neighborhood. We answered their questions. In some cases, we're invited and walked their properties. And when I say we walked their properties, I mean Mr. Rosenthal, not me. I guess the royal we is him. So we've kept their questions and concerns in mind as we've drafted the proposed ordinance and revised the sketch plan. I think on balance, the comments that we received were that, and look, I mean, everybody likes to have an open field behind their home. But I think on balance, we did not hear anybody that would rather have industrial zoning than the residential zoning that we propose. There was one comment that they did not want to see townhouses built there. That, of course, is not our proposal. Our proposal is for single-family detached dwellings, so that's in conformance with that question. And they wanted to make sure that the homes were not built too close to them and that there was sufficient buffering and things of that nature. And we did that, and we provided that in the plan as well. So all of the things that we said here before continue to be true, but in addition to that, we took into consideration their comments and brought it forward a little bit so that there would be more buffering than what we anticipated. We were cognizant of just how far back we were setting the homes, as John had mentioned in his comments. I believe you said a minimum of about 180 feet from the actual home to home, which is very significant and probably closer to 200 in many of the cases. So that's where we are. And finally, we were contacted by a gentleman, Grant Wolfgang, who I've never met and don't know whether he's here tonight. He lives at 3039 Cowpath Road, who was unable to attend the breakfast meeting, but forwarded to us a copy of an email that he had previously sent to your township manager, Aaron Brebro. And he expressed his support for a rezone of the property to residential. And I included a copy of his email to us, which incorporated his letter to Aaron in the packet as Exhibit 6. And I think what you'll see is he, like many of the comments we've heard, would much prefer the residential. He apparently liked the type of home we were building as a single-family dwelling. Thought that it was a good use and would enhance the value in the neighborhood that he lived in, and he lives in one of the houses to which I've referred. So we've included that email and that letter as Exhibit 6 in our package, and you can see the other nice things that he had to say about our plan. Suffice it to say that no one we've spoken to preferred the industrial to the residential development. As to the planning commissions, to reiterate what we discussed previously at the previous hearings, you heard from our land planner, John Kennedy, who testified that the change in zoning to residential is appropriate. His opinion was shared by the Township Planning Commission, a member of which is a well-regarded land planner in his own right. They unanimously supported the rezone. Finally, his opinion was supported by, and I mean John's opinion was supported by the Montgomery County Planning Commission, which stated unequivocally that the property should be rezoned. The Township Planning Commission, the Montgomery County Planning Commission believed that the property should be rezoned back in 2009, and they still believe it today. It just makes good planning sense. The requested rezone is also supported by the law. As I indicated to you, Pennsylvania law requires that this board zone the land in a reasonable and rational way, balancing the interest of the private property owner and the community as a whole to develop appropriate zoning. We haven't met anybody that thinks that appropriate zoning is industrial at this location. The restrictive covenant. I'll point out that we'll be recording a restrictive covenant. Again, that is not something that's been negotiated with the township. It would be improper to do that. I see Mr. Iannozzi is shaking his head in the affirmative to agree. However, we will make sure that all of those things that you have indicated to us are important in the presentation of our plan are incorporated into that restrictive covenant, notwithstanding the fact that you're not participating in the filing of it or the negotiating of it. The restrictive covenant states that it'll become effective if the property is rezoned, and we have requested that within 1 year of its filing, if that rezone is done within 1 year of its filing, and it will be filed shortly, if we are well received this evening with respect to the answers that we provided to you, and that so long as you rezone the property within 1 year, we certainly hope it's done quicker than that, but the covenant would become effective, and if for any reason it was to be determined by your solicitor that they had concerns about the effectiveness of the covenant, we would certainly make sure that their concerns were alleviated. So we have no issue in that regard. I think through the hearings we've shown that the residential zoning is appropriate, industrial zoning is not, and we've now tailored the plan to provide many additional benefits to the township and the residents that you, quite frankly, have picked up on and that members of the community have picked up on as we've gone through one hearing and another. We have appreciated the opportunity to allow us to come back and answer each of these questions. I think I have addressed all 11 of the issues that you had set forth, and I think in the 11, I identified all the things that we had addressed the last time we were here. And I think we're in a position at this point to suggest to you that you should refer the ordinance to your solicitor for any additional sprucing up that they feel is appropriate, and then you may want to move forward with a hearing and the ultimate adoption if we are so fortunate to obtain your support.
So the process that was just suggested to us is you would review the ordinance that is being proposed, you would make sure that it's in order, and then the next step would be a formal hearing at one of our meetings.
That is correct.
Anything out of order, I don't, from that agreement's perspective, you would just coordinate with the applicant and make sure that everything was consistent with our obligations. Well, anytime we've had a number of rezones, for those of you who are unfamiliar with our process over the years, we've had a number of rezones, and we're always appreciative when an applicant, if they have some shortcomings in their plan, come back and meet with residents, get their input, meet with us, come to a meeting, come back with a revised plan to the sense that they say, okay, we understand what the Hatfield Township's needs are, what the residents' needs are, so we're very appreciative of that. Personally, I'm very appreciative of the fact that not only did you meet with the temple, but there's a writing here that sets forth some commitments to them, and I see that Mr. Patel, Kamlesh Patel, a great friend of Hatfield Township, has actually seen it and authorized it, or at least recognizes that he's received it. So that's important. As one voter of 5, that's very important to me, and I thank you, Mr. Patel. Presumably you spent a fair amount of time having discussions about this. So, any other comments from commissioners or consultants? Yeah, I'll do residents after commissioners.
So just a quick question. So the lot size has been reduced to 9,000 square feet. The home sizes have not, correct?
That's right. The homes are the same.
And so you stated you're taking credit for 29.4% open space. Well, 2.6 for that, 2.68 of that will be, I guess, deeded over to the Township?
No, actually, Jerry, and it's a very good question because I was not clear on that. Let me say this. 2.68 acres is going to be deeded from our total acreage to the Baptist Church. That's part of it. From what is left then, 29.4% of what is left will remain as open space. That's what creates the reduction in the lot sizes.
Okay. I don't see that clearly marked in here, but because the math I was doing suggested that it, go ahead.
John, you want to handle that?
Yeah, what I was
Yes.
development parcel would be
Okay, so you carved out that 2.68. Okay, got it.
John, can you talk into the microphone, please, so people can hear?
was everything works with the 32 acres. So the minimum tract size, the open space, and so on, all of the setbacks. We basically just cut the land out for the temple right off the top, and then the 29% is of the balance.
Thanks for the clarification. And so, for that deeded property, what percent of that property can be developed under the new zoning if it were to be granted?
What
That 2.68% that's being deeded over.
What percent of that would be developed? Well, I'm not really sure what the size of their building is. Let me see how we have that designated.
So the reason I asked is I see there's a proposed structure on there, right? Future.
There are two. One is an addition.
That's on the,
Where their kitchen,
yeah.
they would like
Right.
3,000. Right.
Right.
About a 5.
Okay. Okay.
They're here to talk. What we want to do is help them. Houses that were designed,
Right.
you get to hear a lot about. There were no open space rules in this state. We're lucky. Work with them, and we've agreed to go back and actually do that buffer plan.
Good.
So we're going to continue.
Right, so I appreciate that, and I think what I see here is an improvement, because I think one of the questions we had were, the original plan showed houses butting up against those properties doing a
Correct.
pad. So I don't live there, but it appears to be better than what it was with this new plan. The original question I asked was for that 2.68%, and may not have the answer today, or 2.68 acres, of that 2.68, with the new ordinance, what could be developed on that lot?
That's what I was going to attempt to answer for you. Under the RA2, which, as I mentioned, one of the uses that we added to that is the religious use.
Right.
And so for residential use, the minimum lot size is 12,000 square feet. For the cluster residential, it's 9,000 square feet. For any non-residential use, it's 2 acres. So the religious use would be allowed on a 2-acre lot minimum, but it is also requires a special exception. So, and this is consistent with other parts of your ordinance, which also allow religious uses by special exception. So that actually is the first thing that has to happen, is that the temple would need to make application to the zoning hearing board. There would have to be a special exception. That would be just for the use. Then they would come into land development. And there, in the ordinance, there are standards for setbacks, building coverage, and so forth.
I guess I wouldn't have expected to be able to answer that question. I'll have to ask Ken that question when we're done. So he can put it down the numbers.
Yeah, the exact, what it's really going to come down to, it's going to be based off of coverage, like any other.
Previous cover.
We do not have that answer.
Understood, and I'll get that answer from Ken.
Yeah,
What would be allowable under the ordinance?
And what you get an idea of, we didn't lay it all out and design it, but you get the building coverage, you get the impervious coverage, because obviously they need to add parking, and so that is actually what's going to limit it, like any other church that exists in Hatfield.
Right, and it looked like the additional parking was already on the already existing lot that they own, not on the new lot that would be deeded.
Correct. Again, we have not laid that all out, but part of that is a garden space. Part of it would also be used for the common stormwater. Part of it would be used for the building, one of the building expansions.
I understand their ideas. What I need to get is from Ken, so I'll talk to him after the meeting.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Frank, can you remind me what's the square footage on the homes that are proposed?
Let me ask Mr. Rosenthal to remind me, but thank you. Those square footages. And they would be two-story, right? They would be two-story. Right.
Individual drives, we're not talking about drives that are shared or next to each other.
Two-car garage.
Okay.
Individual, we're concerned with working with.
What is the depicted cartway on that road?
So that it was prepared as though they could be public streets then?
Yes.
I was just talking about the size, Bob. Yeah, just making sure the cartway was wide enough.
All right, any other questions from the dais, commissioners or consultants? All right, Mr. Barr, would you, if this is an appropriate time, I was going to open up the floor to
Oh, sure.
residents, unless you tell me you have other offerings or exhibits of any kind.
No, I'll be happy to answer anything as a result of whatever questions or comments we get from the residents, and I thank you.
Any residents who would like to come to go to the podium and give us your opinion. Now, understand that I said earlier, there's no decision made tonight. This is just a presentation that is being made in response to the shortcomings that we identified previously. So there is expected to be an application, a formal application, which will require another hearing like we had before, and there'd be opportunities to speak then. So do not feel as though this would be your only opportunity to speak. But, you know, this is a brand-new plan, and for those of you who have been following along, and if you want to make any distinctions between the two, or you just have a comment, feel free to go up to the dais. I mean, up to the podium. All right, I don't see anyone running up to the podium, which is fine. We do like when people are here, though, so feel free to come back. You're all invited to every meeting, second and fourth Wednesday of every month. Only a couple of you are even smiling. The others are saying, just get me out of here. Understood, understood. I read your face as well. All right, any other questions or comments from anyone? Okay, so I believe the process that was anticipated was that, you know, applicant has a right to file a formal application. Well, I think I set it out before. you've provided us with a contract that the solicitor would review first, and then, John, if you would, have your office review that, and then...
That is correct, and then the developer would have to submit a formal rezoning application.
Okay, and then, I guess whenever it's approved or reviewed by your office, you would let them know, and then they would submit their application thereafter? Right. And then it gets bounced back and forth for a while. Understood.
I think we're saying the same thing, so.
And,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and as a practitioner, I have every confidence that the two of you will probably have some conversation and some revisions, and you'll identify them, and then that'll become the proposed ordinance for the formal application. Okay, understood. All right. Any other questions or comments, folks, on this issue? Okay. We're going to move forward with the remainder of our meeting. You are all welcome to leave if you like, or welcome to stay, which is much more exciting, as I see you all putting on your jackets, running
Mr.
and
President,
running
you
at
might
the
want
door.
to tell them about the sewer budget that's going to be
Oh,
provided next.
yes.
I know they'll want to say.
Yes, for those of you who are interested in the sewer budget, and I know many of you are here for that very purpose, we're finally getting to that item.
No increase.
Park and Rec department. That's a little more exciting than sewer.
Your birthday? I know a lot of things.
Happy birthday.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, just another moment or two while everyone files out.
May not be on that.
Where is Pete? There he is.
Is it-
Lost in a sea of people on another issue. Although, this is a larger crowd than usual for you, so this is very exciting. I think we're probably okay to push ahead. I think the folks in the back are just closing the door, so. Okay, so next on our agenda is Pete Dorney. He's the Executive Director of the HTMA. He's here to present the HTMA 2018-2019 budget presentation, which he does on an annual basis obviously. The HTMA does a great job. We're very thankful for not only its leadership, but those who work there. And so Mr. Dorney comes in and reports to us periodically during the year, and especially when it comes to the budget. So thank you for coming over, Pete, and the floor is yours.
You're welcome. I guess we'll start with the very small PowerPoint presentation. Should go a little bit quicker than last year. Last year, we had a sewer rate increase. We don't have that this year. As you can see on the front, oops, I'm sorry. As you can see on the front page of the presentation, our budget this year is for $8,589,550. So it's a balanced budget, revenues and expenditures. And we balance it this year with utilizing money from the construction reserve account that we have started to build up again after it was depleted a few years ago with the big interceptor projects and the wet weather projects. So this is one of the first years that we'll start pulling stuff from the construction reserve. We have a fairly aggressive project list this year. If you also have the actual budget in front of you, On the very last page of the budget is the projects that we're planning to do this year, the project expenditures. They total about almost $2.1 million. So with a little over $1.1 million comes out of the construction reserve to balance the budget, which we anticipated all along. This isn't a problem or anything like that. This is what's going to happen. And the largest portion of that will be the Lenhart Road project. That's about 1.1 million. It was estimated, so we're almost pulling everything for the Lenhart Road project out of the construction reserve.
Slide.
Sure.
The construction reserve then after you left for paying Lenhart Road is $1,086,000. Left in the construction reserve that gets carried over. to next year.
That's how much we're pulling from the construction reserve into the revenue to balance the budget.
What is the remaining balance of that reserve?
Construction reserve, probably in the area of 6 million. So it's, but I mean, it's all reserved for specific projects. So you see, but, which page are you on now? Expenses, okay. You can see, pie chart which shows you what our major expenses are, as usual, payroll, benefits, utilities, and projects. Utilities is probably the one that's least predictable under most circumstances. However, we've been able to get lucky and contract some good pricing on natural gas and electric, which keeps that lower and more stable over the last couple of years. And in addition, I just signed an agreement with Constellation for the next 3 years, which actually is almost a 20% decrease in our electric costs. So that works out starting January of 2019, will save us about $67,000 a year in electric costs, which is nice.
11 items listed on the left and more than 11 pieces of pie. So,
I think the slivers were so small that
Right.
on the slide.
Saying there's more items listed than slivers?
there's more slivers than listed.
Oh.
On the next slide.
I've been set up. Okay, and yeah, just as it has been in the past and is still in the past, even after last year or the year before sewer rate increase, we're still among the lowest 10% of sewer rates in the area. We'd like to keep it that way. A lot of that has to do with on the income side of it, where you see the pie chart for the income. You can see a large portion of our income is the orange $1.65 million pie on the left. That's from the truck waste that we are able to bring into the plant and offset sewer rates. Pretty simple budget. I mean, that's unless you have any other questions for me regarding the budget, it's...
You had us with no tax increase.
That's correct. Sewer rate increase.
Rate increase,
No
right.
sewer rate increases.
So
yeah.
it shouldn't be missed, Pete. You're not really boasting enough, but I think in all the times I've been on the board, you've only come in here once or twice asking for an increase. So your organization does a wonderful job of controlling expenses and looking for ways to.
Thank you.
You guys would be commended.
You guys often go out looking for grants or anything like that? I've been noticing a lot of grants for that.
We're not for sewer. We haven't seen any. Have you noticed them for sewer?
I think I just saw one that came across an email.
But some of the ones that we've seen are need-based, and they've looked at us in the past when we've applied for this and said, you don't need it because your sewer rates are too low. Really. We've lost out on a couple because of that.
All right, any questions, comments? Bud, Mr. Hyman's got a question from the audience.
I'm not sure what, we will be, I haven't studied, you're talking about the people that were just here. I would assume that because of them solely, there's very little infrastructure that we would have to pay for. They pay for infrastructure. If they need new sewer lines, they would have to put in the new sewer lines. They would hook in, yeah, it would hook into an existing sewer line coming down. Now, there might be some issues that we have to address downstream further, but we would have to address them anyway. But from a standpoint of any development in Hatfield Township that comes in, they've always put in their own sewer lines. It doesn't cost the residents anything to put in those sewer lines. They also pay tapping fees to the authority for the other costs, and then they'll pay a sewer rate fee as any other resident does too. So there's no cost to any of the residents for new development.
All right. Any other questions, comments for Mr. Dorney? No? Pete, thank you very much as always for coming out, and I echo exactly what Commissioner Andrews just said about you and the staff. Fantastic job. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump next into our committee reports. First is Planning and Zoning Committee, Commissioner Rogers.
Thank you. The first item is S&B Land Development at 45 West Villa Road. Could you take
Yes,
this?
thank you, Commissioner Rogers. I think Mr. Bro is putting the map up which shows where the S&B development site is. It's at just off the intersection of Welsh Road and Orvilla Road. It's at 45 Orvilla Road. This is the existing Spaniel Service Center. It's been there for quite a long time, and this proposal involves a relatively small addition to the existing service center, approximately 1,200 square feet, and in addition will involve some reconfigured stormwater management areas. The addition itself is right here where I'm pointing, and there will also be a few parking spaces that already exist on Freed Avenue, but they'll be paved and properly lined. There will also be modifications to the existing stormwater management system and some additional landscaping placed around the site and along the frontage on Orvilla Road. The project has received recommendations from the local planning commission and from the county planning commission, has also been discussed by the planning and zoning committee. So at this point, once the resolution for approval is prepared by the solicitor's office, it will be ready for you on the 28th. I mentioned Kirk Klaus, the engineer for the project, and Brad Spaniel, the owner, are both in the audience if there are any questions.
I think if we have any questions, we'll probably save them for when it's the consideration after it's been circulated. But we appreciate your coming out tonight. I know you've been here before. And so when it would be our next meeting? 2 weeks,
Correct.
right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, item 2 is the electronic fluorocarbons land development, amended approval for 3266 Burgie Road.
Yes, thank you. Electronic fluorocarbons is a project that most of you probably remember. It was approved a few years ago. It's now completed and fully occupied and operating. The applicant would like to reallocate some space within the approved development area and increase the size of the building on the site, as well as the canopy that shelters the tanks on the property. All of that work would take place on existing impervious cover. So essentially the addition to the building would be this area that I'm outlining with the pointer, and then behind it would be the additional canopy area. And then there's another small canopy area over here, which I believe was constructed as part of the original project. As I say, all of the shaded areas were designated as impervious cover and were already cleared, leveled, and prepared as part of the original development project. The project was discussed at the staff level, and it was determined that there was this would be a good candidate just for an amended approval from the Board of Commissioners as opposed to a brand-new land development application, since all of the stormwater work is in place, all the impervious cover is in place, and the use is already existing on the site. So the idea was to have the solicitor's office prepare an amended land development approval, which would then incorporate this, and then the final plan would be recorded. So we would memorialize all of the changes. So the applicant here, Tommy Arndt, is in the audience, as well as his engineer, Sean Policelli. And if there are any questions from the board, I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them.
We'll still go through the same permitting and oversight inspections and stuff, correct?
Absolutely. It would go through exactly the same permitting that they already did for the portion that's constructed today.
Any other questions? Comments that you'd like us to know about? Tonight's a pretty easy part. He does. He always does. He's an expert, and we thank you for recognizing that. So, okay, so we also move to a next agenda.
Okay, that would be ready for you on the 28th as well.
28th. Thank you for coming out.
Okay, the third item is Clemens Food Group, the amended land development waiver.
Clemens Food Group. Actually, we're actually coming back on a few projects that the board has already seen. In addition to the electronic fluorocarbons that we just discussed, Clemens Food Group received a waiver of land development from the Board of Commissioners approximately a year and a half ago to construct some additional storage space within their freezer complex to really to accommodate product that's coming in from their new facility in Michigan. They're bringing additional product in from Michigan. They need to be able to store it. They have a computerized racking system in their freezers, and in order to handle the additional product, they need to expand the freezer. That's the waiver that was already granted by the board. During final engineering and final development of plans for the site, they realized that in order to make the racking system work properly, they have to slightly expand the area of the warehouse. So it no longer meets the square footage that was in the resolution that was passed by the board a couple of years ago, and they're asking that the resolution just be amended to reflect what they actually need to build right now. So use is the same, the location is the same. Aside from that minor increase in square footage, it is the same project that was already approved by the board.
This is in addition to an existing building, so it's attached to the same building.
That's correct. This is right at the end where Fairgrounds Road dead ends into what used to be Funk's Road. It's the warehouse directly in front.
And it still goes through the same permitting and inspections and stuff like that?
Yes, yes. They'll go through all of the permitting and life safety inspections. Yes.
All right, next agenda then.
Last item is Clemens Corner.
The final one, Clemens Corner. Again, this is a project that was approved by the board back in, I think, 2015. And the project is currently under construction right at the corner of Clemens Road and 40-foot Road. As part of the project, there was right-of-way dedicated to PennDOT along 40-foot Road. In addition to that right-of-way, the township's ultimate right-of-way map shows 15 feet more than PennDOT required. And what staff is recommending that the board do is accept dedication to that additional 15 feet of right-of-way, so that if we ever need it for anything else, or even if PennDOT needs it in the future, it will already have been acquired from the private property owner. So this is it was contemplated on the land development plan. It's offered for dedication on the plan. It's really a matter of the solicitor's office preparing a resolution to allow you to accept it.
Following it on tonight, you know.
Hey.
John's worried he's
I
getting some work
had
for the
4 on
first
my
time.
list tonight. Now you've got 4 on your list for 2 weeks.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All right, I think all 4 of those are moved to our next agenda.
Tonight, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Public Works Committee, Vice President Hughes.
Okay, the PennDOT MTF grant submission is due by the end of March for Cowpath and Orvilla Road. So a resolution will be in the packet for next meeting. Hopefully with the acquisition of the 3 homes there, it'll give us the bump we need to finally get this grant to realign Orvilla Road. And at Cowpath and Berge is a traffic signal modification. PP&L is putting new transmission lines there, and they have to move the light and some adjustments to the pedestrian signal. Aaron has a slide for that.
Summarized it much better than I will, but to just give you an illustration on what's happening, so we all know PP&L is upgrading its lines. It's been talked about at public meetings, smaller meetings throughout the last few years, but specifically in this intersection, anytime any modifications are done to any of these signals or pedestrian crossings, PennDOT requires a permit, and they require a form called the TE 160, which the board has approved through resolutions several times in the last few years, and that's what will be in consideration. To summarize, this large structure will be removed. An equally large structure will be put right around here. Therefore, it will be in the way of our pedestrian crossing. So our ped crossing will move over here, and then the middle is what our traffic engineers call, I don't know if it's a technical word, but a stub like this crossing will then be also installed here for those who aren't able to reach this. So really minor modifications in order to accommodate the upgrading of the PP&L line. One thing of note, all costs associated with any of these improvements will be paid for by PP&L, including all of the design. There's no cost to the township. But since there's work being done on a signal and on a crossing, PennDOT has to approve it. The commissioners have to approve it first. So that's what's happening. I think Commissioner Hughes said it much better.
I read it from your email.
I'm glad you read my email.
So, and the other thing I have is a fuel and chemical bid notice. The annual bid is out for fuel, pool chemicals, heating oil, etc., and that'll be awarded at our next meeting. And that's all I have. I read that from his email too.
Those are good emails.
Someone looks at those emails.
I'm a little insulted. I didn't get an email.
Oh, yeah, you did.
You just didn't read it.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I'm joking. I'm joking. Parks and Rec Committee, Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, President Zipfel. So our preschool sports explorers, we're again partnering with Cal Sports Academy. Spring session starts March 13th. Well, actually, that started yesterday, and runs through April 17th. It's on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And it's Hatfield Township Administration Building. I think I did see something on the Facebook page that they had a good session yesterday, so looks like there were quite a few kids. Program's geared for children ages 3 to 5. The cost is $75 for the entire week, and you can register at hatfieldrec.com. Earth Day. We are going to recognize Earth Day on Saturday, April 14th. Pre-register to volunteer that day. Tina and Bob, did you register already? Earth Day volunteer? Okay, sorry. I thought maybe I could encourage you.
And we're very happy that you do that. Doing that.
Cool. So you can pre-register to volunteer that day with the EAC and Shade Tree Commission at the Hatfield Township Nature Center. Volunteers will enjoy post-cleanup activities such as pizza, vendors, prizes, music, a moon bounce, and more. So if you change your mind. And Ashley says volunteers must pre-register, so you can call the township building at 215-855-0900, extension 126. So 5 and dime races are coming up. Our annual Hatfield Race Series is back and better than ever, so you can register for our first race, the 5 and dime. It will take place Sunday, April 15th at the Hatfield Aquatic Center. Take the challenge and register for all 3 races and receive a special series challenge medal and special gear. For more information on registration, that'll be on the township website and at www.runtheday.org. If anyone is interested in volunteering on race day, you can contact Ashley O'Neill and at the Hatfield Township building. The Aquatic Center season passes, they are now online. You can register for those. You can take advantage of the new software with no extra hassle or fees, and you can find that at hatfieldrec.com. You can visit the Township website for a full listing of available season passes and fees. The second early discount period ends May 4th at 12 o'clock noon. Summer Rec Camp. Registration is now open for that. The camp runs for 9 weeks through June, July, and August. Registration is available on a weekly basis. There are several available discounts. Camp calendar and handbook are currently available on the Township website, so please review all information prior to registration. Visit hatfield.org for more information, details, and the registration. Indoor pickleball. We are continuing to partner with XL Sports to offer indoor pickleball. Current session will actually be winding up. It's going to end March 30th. It's usually on Mondays and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 11:30 and Wednesdays 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. It takes place at XL Sports Facility. It's $10 a resident, $15 for non-resident, and you can register at hatfieldrec.com. And you can stop by the Township building to pick up your pickleball card. I'm assuming that at some point in time, we're going to start the outdoor once the weather starts to change. The Get Fit series continues. We've got After Work Hustle Mondays and Thursdays, 6:15 p.m. to 7 p.m. That started this week on March 12th and runs through April 19th. It's in the community room here. Residents are $60, non-residents $75. Yoga is on Thursdays from 7 to 8 p.m. Starts the 15th and goes through April 19th. Also here at the community room, residents are $30, non-residents $45. Zumba on Tuesdays from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. That started March 13th and runs through April 17th, also here in the community room. Residents are $30, non-residents $45. All of those you can register for at hatfieldrec.com, and if nothing else, we will have a very fit township. That is it.
Great.
Oh, and there was one other thing. We have our lineup for Music Feast, so we're getting ready for that as well.
Wow. Dead of winter, or it feels still like the dead of winter, and we're talking about Music Feast, so thank you for that. All right, public safety. We have two items. First is swearing in. We're going to have the swearing in of the two new police officers who we approved, and that is at our next meeting?
Sir.
Okay, so our meeting 2 weeks from tonight. And then I also have an email, so I'm going to take advantage of reading it. It's related to the no parking signage on Moyer and Schwab Road intersection. Before the construction of the new parking lot on Moyer Road is complete, Chief Tierney, thank you, Chief, is working on a recommendation to add no parking signs in that area to improve sightline issues for vehicles leaving the new parking facility and to improve previous issues brought to our attention by the neighboring residents who we met during this process. I believe Chief anticipates an hour-long presentation on this item,
Tonight.
or maybe slightly less than that.
59 and a half minutes less than in 1 hour.
Okay, a little bit more freedom in our meeting then. But thank you for working on the recommendation for that, Chief, and handling this concern that the residents raised. We appreciate it. And next is Finance Committee, Commissioner Andrus.
Yes, just to piggyback on Commissioner Thomas, the 10% discount period for pool registration officially ended on March 2nd. We had 477 registrations for a total of almost $98,000 worth of revenue. Represents about a $7,000 increase compared to last year. One of the things we've been working for in the pool advisory board is there's been a very disproportionate number of non-residents as members of the pool rather than residents. So we actually have that now, so we have about the same number, 50-50, which is an increase from 40% last year. So we're getting better at attracting our own residents of Hatfield to go to that pool, which is a good thing. And also, season passes are still on sale right now for the 5% discount period, as Laura said, until May 4th. And that expires. That's it.
All right, going to jump right into the Township Manager's Report.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a few housekeeping items. I don't have an email from myself to read here, unfortunately.
Want to borrow this one?
I'm going to have to wing it. So Roughly 6 months ago, the township hired a third-party consultant to look at the fees throughout the township, just to make sure they were in line with two things, really, when you look at fees. You want to make sure they're in line with your neighboring municipalities, but also you want to make sure it's covering the costs of the township that goes into administering these fees. We hear the word fee and taxes thrown out often. A fee needs to be set at an amount to where the municipality is not profiting at all. However, it's covering the cost to administer, and obviously a tax is then something that is generated to operate and provide the necessary services that local government provides. So when looking at this fee, the third party had several recommendations that the township should consider adjusting. Last month, we had a meeting with our finance committee just to go over those. There's a little more than a handful that will be in the packet in 2 weeks, along with the fee resolution, making these adjustments. The majority of these fees are associated with the building permits, and a lot of them with new construction. And really, a lot of them, what we did was, when the consultant looked at it, was that some of these fees hadn't been adjusted in 10+ years. So obviously, costs to administer have increased significantly in 10 years, and we want to make sure that the costs are covered. And the key really here is, when a resident or a developer is doing any improvements, we don't want the rest of the taxpayers in Hatfield subsidizing those improvements to private property. So if we're losing money each time we issue a permit, that means all the residents in Hatfield are subsidizing these improvements to private property, which is not really appropriate. So in 2 weeks, you'll see on the agenda in the resolution an adjustment, mostly minor, nothing significant, but to a lot of the permits that we issue on a daily and weekly basis to get closer to covering the cost. It's not a perfect science, but at least now we have an analysis in hand that shows the total cost that goes into these, and these new fees should at least make sure the township's covering the majority of the costs. My second item is equally as exciting, just in housekeeping item with the Delaware Valley Regional Finance Authority, which is a financing authority we talk about occasionally, more so at budget time, but it's the authority the township has all of its debt through loans. They asked if all of its clients, not just Hatfield, but all municipalities with any outstanding debt, would just update the disclosure agreement, which simply, it's in the packet, simply says things like the township will provide annual financial statements. The township, if ever, would miss an interest or a principal payment, would notify the Regional Finance Authority. Very common practices that they would like to have updated. So that will be on the agenda in 2 weeks for approval of the signing the disclosure agreement. But it's just a nice reminder, too, to mention to all the residents listening or watching that through this finance authority and through some of the moves the commissioners have made over the past several years, all of the debt for the township is at an extremely low interest rate, for the most part under 2.5. We've been able to reset a lot of those over the years, and most of the debt, 80%, will expire within 8 years. So township is in a very good position regarding the debt load from all best management practices, standards. So it's good. That's all I have, Commissioners, Mr. President.
All right. Nothing left other than citizens' comments. Any citizens' comments on agenda items, or actually on non-agenda items? Oh, yeah?
Yeah, this is related to a recommendation that was made by our Park and Recs Director, Ashley O'Neill, about inviting the Special Olympics to partner with us on the puller plunge. I think that would be a fantastic idea. I strongly recommend that we consider that. The Special Olympics does a lot of good things. I think everybody's aware of what they do. And we're quite fortunate to have a facility back there that could really, I think, help them out. And we are very fortunate in Hatfield Township to have. Yeah, we can look into that too. That's just one of the things that they have one in Allentown, they have one in Easton, and they have one in Bensalem in Philadelphia. And we're kind of like in a really central location, and a lot of those places they're actually jumping into a creek. Ours is you kind of go down a slide. It's pretty neat. Yeah. I enjoy it every year. So I just, again, I would highly recommend that the Park and Rec think about partnering with those folks.
I think it's a great idea, and I think it's fantastic that you go down that slide in that freezing cold water every year.
As long as I don't have to.
Kyle just personally,
As,
that's okay.
as a representative of all the remaining commissioners, I think you should do that every year. You're excellent at it.
Hey, and also, we have a challenge out to the solicitor here for the 5 and dime.
Wow.
Mr. Amy?
I'll be there.
Right.
We'll be looking for you.
As Commissioner Thomas said, we're now going to be fit and cold. So
With my hamstring walking out of here, but I'll be there.
Yes, Bill.
Okay, my name is Bill Forst, and my question tonight is the 309 to Turnpike bypass. If you've read in the paper in the last couple of months that Souderton Borough was complaining about the traffic, Township Township was complaining about the traffic at Durstein Road and Allentown Road, and now Franconia is complaining about the traffic. And there's 3 different municipalities that are complaining about the traffic coming through their township. And Hatfield Township and Hatfield Borough is also involved in that. I think there should be some letters from each municipality to send to Harrisburg to really push on this bypass to get it built, and don't delay it like it's been for 40 years now. So.
We can coordinate with Representative Godshaw's office to do that. I know we've done it in the past, but it was probably been a few years ago because this has been going on for 40 years. But
Right.
we can coordinate with him to do something like that.
Bob is leaving at the end of this year.
He is.
And whoever's going to get in there isn't that much familiar to getting this road done. Now, according to Andrew, they said Tuesday, or 2000, what was it, 12?
So the latest is 2020 construction to begin, 2023
Yeah.
construction to end. And just to remind Mr. Forst too, based on, and I think it's a great idea, but based on his recommendation a few years ago, the board passed a resolution encouraging this project to move forward. And we had resolutions passed by all those neighboring communities, started as a similar conversation like this. So I think there's no harm in doing a letter as well. I think it's a great suggestion.
Great, thank you,
Well,
Bill.
I think it would help.
Yep, that would be
Because
great.
there's 5 different municipalities.
Great, thank you. All right. We have come to the end of our meeting. I'm going to take a motion to adjourn. Before I do that, though, I need to announce that we're going to go into executive session to discuss real estate. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
By Vice President Hughes, second by Commissioner Thomas. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming out, folks.